And really, really without further ado, and good morning to Lisa, who's also going to hide herself, but we want to pass it over to Jordan to get us kicked off. And again, please use the Q&A button for any questions you guys might have. We'll take them towards the end. Thank you guys so much. Off to you, Jordan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Definitely excited to be here. And thank you, everyone, for carving this out of your Wednesday. What we're going to chat through today is understanding the scope of work for large capital reserve projects. Should be about 30 minutes. And yeah, feel free to ask questions along the way. And if there's something that we want to discuss, we'll bring it up. But if not, we can save everything towards the end. And my slide's not moving. Here we go. A little bit just about me. I'm the vice president at Affordable Quality Painting. We were founded in 2010, and we are a certified general contractor. I actually hold that general contractor's license. And yeah, our main thing is exterior renovations to multifamily and condo associations. So yeah, just real quick how this works. We'll be doing this for about roughly an hour. Yeah, it's for, kind of for that condo association manager. We're trying to make everything practical as well, just how it actually works out in the field. And again, just feel free to ask questions as we move along here. A little bit of a roadmap. And the main thing, and one of the reasons why I felt this course was so important to teach, is because so many times we're, hearing back from, managers or boards, and they say, hey, we got our 3 bids, we got our 5 bids, but they're wildly different numbers. We've got one guy is at 80,000. We've got another guy that's at 400,000. And so, you get your numbers back, but they're so far apart. And you have the question, hey, did these guys even look at the property? Is it the same project? Like, why? Why are these numbers so different? And, if that's happened, you're definitely not alone. Like that, we hear that so often. And, one of the biggest reasons is the scope of work. A lot of times there isn't a scope of work. It's, hey, we know these buildings need to be, repainted. It's coming up on reserves. And then you just get one contract out there, another contractor out there. And yeah, they just come up with their own price. And so that's what we're going to talk through here. We're really going to understand, hey, how do we create a scope of work? How do we actually get bids apples to apples? And so, yeah, definitely excited for that. So, why this matters now, obviously the Surfside collapse, Florida has rebuilt the rules for condominium and reserve projects. And for managers, that means, there's more attention towards you to make sure that the projects are completed and make sure that they're completed, well. And so, there's a lot less time to defer those projects. Those projects need to be done, and they need to be done correctly. So yeah, what is a capital reserve project? A capital reserve project replaces or restores major building components at the end of its useful life. They're high cost, long-lived, and they're planned through the association's reserve rather than their operating budget. Some examples of these projects are roofing, exterior painting and waterproofing, paving, concrete balconies, windows and doors, rail systems, if anyone has rail systems, and then your internal building systems as well, such as plumbing, electrical, fire. So yeah, understanding these a little bit more. Obviously, you're going to have your operating and maintenance projects. These are going to be the routine. They're lower cost. A lot of times, the board will give the CAM the ability to, get those things done. They're not necessarily needing approval. They're paid for by the annual operating budget. Could be cleaning, pressure washing, minor repairs, touch ups, pothole patching, just kind of those small day to day things. And then you have your capital projects or your reserve projects. These are infrequent, they're happening 5 to 10 years to 15 years. They're planned and they're high cost. And it replaces or restore or being restored at the end of the useful life, and it's typically funded from the reserves, the SIRS. And examples here are roofing, repainting, waterproofing, repaving, concrete restoration, etc. So, what's the manager's role in this? A couple things here. Definitely, one of the things is to help plan and schedule, to align yourself with the reserves, what's in there, the scope. And I think this particular one is the one where a manager can be extraordinarily helpful, is understanding that scope. Here's what we want to do, and just getting it very detailed. We'll get into that a little bit later. Overseeing the execution, the document and reporting, and then advising the board of everything. And if you pick the right contractor, if you pick the right company, a lot of that stuff, the planning, overseeing execution, document and reporting, they're going to do a lot of that to make the manager really look like the hero. And then you're able to present that to the board, and they're going to be, amazed at how awesome you are as a manager because you picked that right company. So even within all these, though they are your, kind of your responsibility in these projects, if you spend a lot of your time and focus on that scope, that's going to be, I think, very, very beneficial to the board in the long run. So yeah, common reserve projects, we chatted about this already. So yeah, what drives the works? Obviously, you've got your milestone inspections and your SIRS inspections and structural integrity reserve study. So yeah, these are kind of the two main things that are driving these larger capital improvement projects. Milestone buildings, 3 stories or higher that are inhabitable. At 30 years, some of the coastal areas are at 25, and then following every 10. There's a visual and then a deterioration phase, and then repairs typically need to begin within 1 year of the second phase. And then the structural integrity reserve study, every 10 years for 3 stories or higher that is inhabitable. There's 8 components: roofing, structure, fireproofing, plumbing, electrical, waterproof, and painting, windows and doors, and items 25,000 or higher. And one thing too is that reserves, they used to be able to be waived, but they're not allowed to be waived anymore. And so these are kind of one of the key indicators of what's driving a lot of these larger projects. So yeah, budgeting for these projects. Reserve is money that's set aside for a major expense later. So the cost of the long-lived component is spread across the owners. It's not dumped on whoever's there right away. For example, if you have an owner who's lived there for 5 years, they're paying into those reserves. If they go and sell, that next owner is also paying over the next 5 years. So it's shared. You're not doing a one-time assessment fee when something comes up. Yes. So the SIRS reserves are protected. There are 2 cost thresholds to know. The reserves that are required for roof, painting, and paving that are greater than 10,000, and the SIRS structural items that are greater than 25. So, definitely thinking through and planning on that longer horizon for those 25 plus years when the work's going to need to get done. And estimating the cost the right way. Um, that there's a lot of companies that will come out and help with reserve budgeting, but just knowing for yourself, quantify the work. You want to measure the work. What's the square footage? What's the linear footage? How much, cubic yards, and thinking around unit pricing and quantifying it. You want to try and stay away from any subjective things, but get very specific quantified numbers. The useful life and timing. How much, useful life does this roof or pavement or paint job have left in it? Um, a lot of times they have specified lifetimes, but if for whatever reason the contractor didn't do things um, quite the right way, they may need, their useful life might be shorter than what was originally planned. So it's definitely good to make that assessment. Um, so yeah, escalation. Obviously, if you're going into budgeting something and if you're trying to save reserves right now, thinking through, okay, what is labor costs going to be? If a 2x4 is currently 250, what's it going to be in 5 years? And just adding, making sure that you're thinking through those costs. And then contingencies. Anytime you do a large project, you're going to pull something back and you're going to realize, oh, wow, we didn't see that there when we started this project. That is always going to happen. And I can't stress it enough. There's never, ever going to be a project that goes exactly with, what the contractor bid says. And that's just kind of the way that the construction works. Um, and then also, thinking through and remembering your soft costs. So engineering, design, and permitting if needed, inspections, testing, certain communications, even just understanding the additional time that it's going to take for whoever's managing, or if there's a board there, just understanding all of that. And then when the reserves don't cover it, the HB 913 gives you guys a couple tools. Usually with a majority vote of the total voting interest. So you have your reserves, your special assessments, and then a loan or line of credit in order to hit those inspections. So just a real quick, like small case study of budgeting for a roof replacement. So you've got some assumptions here. You got mid-rise condo. The roofing area is 40,000 square feet or 400 squares. The installation cost today would be about $11 per square foot, and it's got about 5 years left. And with that, we're going to say costs are increasing about 5% every year, which is about on par, a little bit higher. I know Sherwin-Williams is one of our biggest manufacturers that we work with, and we absolutely love them. Can't say enough good things about Sherwin. But one of the things that they tell us every single year is, hey, it's a 3% cost increase. So making sure that you have your cost escalation in there, and then adding your contingencies and soft costs as well. So over here on the other side, if you look at, so we've got our base cost today, we're adding the additional price of what it would be in 5 years, and then we're adding our contingency. And then we know that the total price to replace this roof would be $673,000 in 5 years. We're going to divide that by 5. We know we've got $134,000 a year that we need to save. You can divide that again and get your monthly cost. Divide that by 12. But that's just a quick understanding of those larger projects, just how you're going to come to get that budget in place. So creating a scope of work, and yes, this is fun. And I think this is where a lot of people, can benefit from. One of the things that we see a lot on our side is someone will give us a manufacturer's specifications and think that it's a scope of work. So you have, we get a lot of the Sherwin-Williams specifications, and we'll even ask people, hey, do you have a scope of work that we can look at? And they'll send us the Sherwin-Williams spec. And we'll get into this a little bit, but that is telling us what products we should use, how much millage, what the application process should be. That's not telling us what needs to be done to the property. So getting back into this, why a detailed scope matters. A vague scope is, hey, we just need the buildings painted. And then, you tell that to your contractors, they come in and all their bids are all over the place. And then even yet, once you get started, you're asking them to replace the wood rot. And then the painter says, well, that wasn't in our bid. And so you're starting to accumulate change orders, and it's going from, a $200,000 project to a $450,000 project. And then that will lead into disputes of, hey, I thought that was included. Why wasn't that included? I assumed you weren't going to paint over rotted wood, which is a fair assumption. And then, the association is really the one who's absorbing the risk in that. If you have a detailed scope of work, this is going to define, what products are being used. This is going to put quantities to, how much wood rot there is, how much stucco repair there might be, how many windows need replaced. And it's going to create fewer change orders. You're going to have very predictable costs. And there's clear accountability, and that accountability shifts to the contractor now rather than staying with the association. So a little bit of risk mitigation there and in that detailed scope of work, and being able to put that on the contractor. So yeah, a little bit of kind of what I said earlier. A manufacturer's spec is not a scope of work. And I can't say that enough. I can't tell you how many times we've gotten a Sherwin-Williams spec and they think it's a scope of work. What the paint spec gives you, it tells your contractor which primers, sealants, top coats, how to prep, application standards, generic guidance. If you see stucco crack that's less than 1/4, fill it with elastomeric patching. If it's greater than 1/4, you want to drill it out, put backer rod in, and re-stucco. There's no quantities in a manufacturer spec. A spec, it doesn't say, there's 430,000 square feet that needs painted. There's 715 linear feet of wood rot that needs replaced. So what a true scope adds is its exact measurements of what gets replaced or repaired. It's not just saying replace damaged siding. And this allows every contractor to be able to bid on those exact quantities rather than coming up with their own quantities. Because a lot of coming up with the quantities is subjective. It's a little bit more of an art than a science. And so we'll get into that here in a little bit, but just being able to give an exact quantity as a starting point is super important and super helpful. So the true scope, it has numbers in it. So yeah, this is actually built from a bid that we just did, and it allowed every bidder to kind of bid the same thing. So there's fence repairs, there's 25 locations, there's siding repairs. I believe it was hardy siding, so there's 715 linear feet. Stucco repairs, there's 239 square feet of stucco repair, and then we had to replace a single screen in all the balconies. And so when giving the quantity of what needs to be repaired, you should also be looking from your contractor of a unit price. And that unit price makes everything audible, and it really helps with kind of the change orders that could come into play. Like I said earlier, with these big projects, anytime you're going in, you're going to find additional stuff. And so if you have that baseline of, hey, we have, I'll just use the 715 linear feet of hardy siding repairs. Um, that's our baseline. But going back to repairs are more of an art than a science. You could have, two homeowners, two board members, two different managers come out and look at siding. One of them could see like a small little scratch on it, and one of them really wants that board to be replaced. Then you could have someone that sees that scratch and like, oh, that's just a scratch. It's not structural. Paint will cover it. It's not a big deal. And the truth of the matter is, in that scenario, neither one of those people are right or wrong. It's just their viewpoint of it. Now, when it gets structural, there's definitely a right or wrong. But with a lot of these repairs, it can be somewhat subjective. And so having your unit cost lets lets the property know and understand, okay, if we do want this one that's scratched, we know we're going to be charged $12 a linear foot. It's a 12-foot board, and figuring all that stuff out ahead of time. But again, a lot of that stuff is judgment calls. Wood rot, how far do you chase it? It's structurally sound, but it doesn't look good. Stucco cracks. A lot of times with stucco, you'll open it a little bit. A great example, we had a property up in Gainesville, and we did the visual inspection. We did as much as we could, and we said there was about 70 square feet of stucco that needed to be repaired. The quote was approved. We started the repair process. We took the stucco off, and then a whole section of it just fell right off, and that one little section turned into 250 square feet. They ended up having to redo the entire envelope. And so there's just some things that until you get in there, you just can't see. Even, shutters, a lot of times, a shutter will look like it's sound on there, but once you're up there on the fourth story and you look behind that shutter and you see, there was a plastic anchor that was used and it's no longer there. So just and keeping that in mind too, as you do the project. Hey, we're gonna find stuff along the way, and then it's just up to you guys to know, do we want to take care of it now? Do we not want to take care of it? Because budgeting is a real thing too. I mean, ideally, budgets were endless, and we could redo the entire property, roof, windows, doors, and make it brand new. But again, that's not the reality, and budgets are a thing. Um, so yeah, we've got 6 components of a strong scope of work. You've got your objectives and goals. What outcome are you buying? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? And then your detailed work descriptions. And this is the scope. I think this is the most important one. What actually is it that you are trying to accomplish, and putting quantities to that? If there's one thing you can remember, it's put quantities to your scope of work, including deliverables and deadlines, standards and testing. With us, a lot of what we do is that exterior painting. Sherwin-Williams will actually come out, measure the millage. So, making sure that hey, what is the standards and what's the testing that's going to happen here? Your budgeting and payment terms. Is it, a 20% mobilization fee and then 20% draws until the project's completed? And then what's excluded in it, and what are some assumptions? The assumption can be, hey, if we go above that 715 linear feet of hardy siding, the assumption is you're not going to go above that until you tell us. That will avoid any odd change orders in the future. So building the scope step by step. So really, we want to define the objective, confirm what's needed from the reserve study, inspection, or a board decision. And then we want to assess the site. And this is where I think a lot of people skip, or try and pawn it off to someone else. And this is the area where you, as a property, as a manager, have the potential to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars just because the site wasn't walked. For example, um, if you tell your contractor, hey, we want this repainted, they come out and you haven't walked the property and you just kind of trust them, and they come out and walk it and they give you, a $500,000 exterior repaint with the works in it. And this guy is one who's, replacing the little teeny scratches. It's just something that you trusted them. And not, again, not to say that it's wrong. I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's just, because there wasn't that intimate relationship with the building and the project and what needed to be done, someone was able to charge an additional $100,000. So the biggest thing, and I know it's tough in the Florida heat, but walking the building, and walk every building. Every building can be different. Every elevation can be different. Walk as much as you can. If it's just one building, make sure you're walking all sides of the building and trying to get to every elevation that you can. But then just when you're walking, gather everything that you're seeing. I see wood rot. I see rusted metal. I see, whatever it may be. And if it's structural, definitely, bring an engineer in. But a lot of times you can, honestly, you can just walk it yourself and write down the things that you're seeing. So then after that, you want to draft the scope of work, and, be as specific as you can, and seek guidance and counsel. What types of paint should we use? That's where you can call Sherwin-Williams. And then, yeah, set acceptance and testing, schedule the milestones, and then review and issue the project. So yeah, building the scope step by step. And again, the best of the scopes, it starts with that walk the property yourself, write everything down, hand it to your trusted contractor, use engineers where they shine. If it's not structural, what we've seen is engineers will usually come in and find tons of stuff. Again, not that that's wrong. That's just the way it is. And if it's structural, definitely go with them. If it's not, I would trust your contractor. And then, yeah, make sure you're attaching manufacturer specs, whether that's a roofing spec, window spec, paint spec. And what's the one thing about the specs that we wanted to remember? They are not the scope of work. We're attaching them along with the scope of work. And then we're going to send that same package to every bidder. That package is going to have those specific quantities. And then that way you have a baseline of really comparing apples to apples. And again, in that too, just remembering, look for those unit prices, because you're going to find stuff in the future while you're on site, while the job's going on. And it's better to understand the price that it's going to be ahead of time rather than having someone come back and say it's X amount more. So yeah, let's draft it. Exterior repaint. The condo board wants the buildings repainted. So yeah, we want to paint the building into the scope that gets comparable bids. So the surface prep, this is where, the surface prep section is in the paint specs, but really figuring out, hey, how much stucco repair, wood rot repair, metal repairs, what quantity needs to be prepped for this project. Now you're moving on to your products. Okay, we want to use Sherwin-Williams Duration, or a Benjamin Moore product, or a Florida Paints product. What product do we want to use? What's the difference? Is there a manufacturer warranty on this? Coats and thickness. Is it a color change? What is it, a primer and a top coat? The warranty. Access and protection, asking, hey, how are they going to do this project? We were on a big condo up in Panama City, right on the beach. We were hoping to be able to get to everything with lifts, and it turns out we weren't able to, and so we had to scaffold the entire building. Um, it was a big change in the budget. Luckily, our if something's our fault at AQP, we eat it. So it was a big error, but we ate it. And but access is a big thing. So how are they going to access the buildings? Um, Conditions. Can you paint in the summertime? Can you paint in the winter? How are you going to, accept it? Are there going to be walkthroughs? Is Sherwin-Williams going to come look at it? And then payment terms as well. Um, so that's what a good scope of work could all entail. And so when you're sending that out to all the different contractors, roofers, installers, whoever it might be, you know that you're going to get a very apples to apples comparison of that big. So managing contractors and compliance. So selecting contractors. Um, one of the biggest things is just making sure that they're licensed and insured. Um, a lot of people use third party compliance, which is super helpful for the insurance side. Licensing, um, just making sure they have their license. There's all sorts of different types of license, and a lot of work you don't need license for. But just, kind of checking in and making sure that they are licensed. Um, and then, you want to look at references and track records. And, most contractors or roofers or installers, they're going to have a list of references ready to go. Financial stability, which, speaking from experience, the finance side of things is always tricky as far as getting payment. There's a lot of times we'll start a job and then finish a job, where we've only received 2 draws. So a lot of times, and this is just how the world works, it's just the way it is, but the contractors do finance the projects. So making sure that your contractor has the financial stability to finance your project for you. In an ideal world, it doesn't work that way, but I mean, I'm sure everyone understands that, here's the invoice. I got to send it to this person. They have to send it to this person. They need to approve it. And it has to go through a lot of loopholes. It's just the way it is, but you want to make sure your contractors have that financial stability. And then your apples to apples bid. Again, if we have that great scope of work, then you're going to have apples to apples. So just stuff, that's going to really protect the association there. Your payment and retainage, what's the change order process? And again, I'll say it again, once you start a big capital project, there's going to be something that you didn't see. That's just the way it works. There's no way around it. So just understand that and talk about it on the front end. Schedule and anything that goes wrong, how are we correcting it? Warranties, lien protection, and then insurance. Florida compliance essentials. Just some more legal stuff there, permits and license work, milestone, repair timelines, how quickly do you need to have things done? Any conflict of interest, does someone on the board have a family member that's doing this project? Are they charging more than they should be charging? So just thinking through that type of stuff. And then, making sure that we're sending residents and owners appropriate timelines for the project. So and anticipate the challenges as well on projects. These are big projects. We're turning a living space into a construction zone. We're touching every single inch of your property, and we want to protect your property just as much as you do. But with projects this big, there's just things that can happen. So, there can be change orders, hidden conditions of whatever substrate you're working on, weather and access, the lift to scaffolding example, resident communication, cash flow and draws, closeout and warranties. So just these are all really good things to think through while you're doing these larger projects and making sure that there's steps in place that kind of cover all of these things. So that kind of wraps it up. Yeah. So, I mean, are there any questions, any key takeaways from anyone? Just would like to open it up to everyone and see if there's any questions.
We do have some questions. Thank you so much, Jordan. And for a few of you asking about the slides, you are going to contact Jordan directly to get those slides if you would like them. That is going to be separate from the recording of this webinar that will be posted on acebytsk.com. And I did share the link in the chat for where you can find those webinars. This one will be up in a couple of days. All right. Starting with Andy, do you service the whole panhandle?
Yes, we do. Yep. We service the entire state of Florida.
There you go. Excellent. Barbara, where does a separate project manager fit in? How does it differ from the CAM role?
Yeah. Amazing question. And every contractor will do this differently. We have a dedicated project manager for each project. We do weekly site reports. So ideally, they are going to be separate. And ideally, that, whoever you pick to do the work, they're, in my mind, for our company, it's our job to make that cam look like the hero. Like that cam, the board is going to be in awe of them. They're going to have all the information, pictures, documentation, any issues that arise, the company should take care of it. But so to answer the question directly, yes, they should be separate. The contractor should have a project manager that's really managing the project that works hand in hand with the cam, and they can really tackle those things together. I know for us, we put out notices, on behalf of the property for the cam, so they don't have to worry about it. We provide that weekly update. Any issues that arise, we take care of them within 24 hours. But those are all things it's a great question that you should look for in selecting your contractor.
Excellent. And I just want to, before we move on, I want to make sure that everybody sees in the chat that I've put the evaluation form in there. If you don't have your chat button open, please click on your chat button right now at the bottom of your screen of your Zoom interface. Have it open, and I'm going to put it again in there in just a minute. All right. And I'll put it in there a couple of times, but just click on the chat so it's open so that you can receive it. All right. So Rosemary, if capital assets, auxiliary buildings in this case, have not reached the end of their useful life based on a reserve study, why should they be replaced and deplete the reserves currently on deposit?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds subjective, like you could do either one. I mean, I don't know what those buildings look like. I mean, if they haven't reached the end of their useful, I mean, that could be a paper statement, you know, when you look at the building, the paper statement can be different than what it is. If it's an auxiliary building, it's smaller, I would recommend, doing it. If it's a part of a larger project, if it's something that's just, up there and you're going to deplete your reserves, just by doing those buildings, yeah, I might not do it. But that sounds like a little bit more case by case. And I guess my thought there would be, paper versus reality can be different. So just make sure you're in the reality and look at the building and make sure that you protect your asset. So.
Thank you. Christopher, what are some red flags for change orders / supplementals?
Yeah, change orders.
Mhm.
If change orders aren't discussed ahead of time, I would I would think through every change order is a red flag. And that's why it's so important to discuss everything ahead of time. You're gonna have change orders. There's no doubt about it. When they turn into a red flag is, I guess depending on the type of the project or the size of the project, how frequently are you getting change orders? Once if, for our work, once we start one or two buildings, or for any work, once you're 20% of the way through, the gist of the project, you can essentially project, okay, of this 20% that we've done, these things have all been, there's been additional wood rot. There's, the fastenings behind the shutters are broken on this many. We're going to think that's the same throughout. And then you're going to have a conversation, ahead of time, like, hey, this is what we're seeing. We're expecting this on the entire property. So I would say that the frequency of your change orders, and if they're communicating, we're going to see this with the rest of the property. If the change order itself isn't the red flag, it's kind of how your contractor, or whoever is helping you with those change orders would be my best advice.
This next one is interesting. Can the soft costs, for example, engineering costs, be legitimately charged the reserve budget, or do you have to fund those costs through the operating budget? And I'm curious, we do have an engineer in the group, and I'm curious
Yeah,
if you have an idea about this.
I don't know, so I
Yeah.
would defer to him.
Yeah, I would definitely talk to some of the folks that do, even Plastrich Insurance offers to do, free budgeting and things like that. South State Bank from the financing standpoint. They're all really amazing resources that are really available to help you guys with questions like this. So you will have an opportunity in the evaluation form to opt in to be contacted by any of our sponsors and partners. So this is one that I would opt in to be contacted by a couple of those to ask this question. All right. Let's see. How is a manager expected to know this detailed information, like exact measurements of underlying damage?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I just got it
No, that's
down.
okay. How is a manager expected to know this detailed information, like the exact measurements, excuse me, of underlying damage?
Yes, and to be clear, I don't think it's anyone's expectation that you are supposed to know, or that you're supposed to get those measurements. I think the biggest thing to remember is, you're looking for those measurements. So, walk the property, you can see, okay, there's wood rot here, there's wood rot there. You can get a rough guess. But that's when I would bring in a trusted contractor. I know there's some consultants, there's some project consultants that will come in and help you with that. But then once you have that intimate knowledge of the building, then bring in, someone that you trust and say, okay, we need numbers on wood rot, we need numbers on stucco, doors, metal. Can you put that together for me? We do that for our customers. Um, and it's, and then they take that and then they go send it to, three or four contractors to get a bid. But to your point, I don't think you're expected to know that. I think the expectation for you is looking for a scope of work that has those quantities in it.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. Are you saying that a contractor can develop the scope of work in detail before putting it out for bid? How do you find a contractor to do that? Most of them want to bid for work, not interested in helping pre-project, which, makes sense.
Yeah. And I get that, we're that way too. Like if someone sent us a scope of work that was like this, it'd be great. But, I think it comes down to just, the willingness of your contractor, of someone that you trust. It is something that we do. Um, and I know there's some other contractors that will do it, but yes, it's tough and frustrating. Like you go walk 19 buildings, or you have a building that's, 16 stories high. Like how, it's a difficult process, especially in the Florida heat, you just go out there and sweat for 3 hours. But it's,
And this is where, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to suggest that, this is a lot of times when you're looking for a contractor that you trust, you're looking for a service provider that you trust, an expert that, has a good reputation in the industry. This is where you really rely on communities like ours, and you go and ask
Mhm.
Jordan, hey, who's the contractor in this area that you guys have worked with that has, shown up and I can rely on? Or you go ask, our engineering firm or one of the guys, that we have, the folks that we have in our community. Because they are all a lot of times working together. They're on projects. They see the ones that are doing a great job. They see the ones that aren't doing a great job. And a lot of times they're your best referral. And I know a lot of you guys that attend these events every week, you have met some of the experts in our group, whether they're in person in some of our in-person locations here in South Florida or online across the state. So that's always a place that I would start is find somebody in a group that has a trusted reputation within the industry that you can ask for that referral. Or somebody you've worked with. Let's say you've worked with Jordan. He's a great person to start with if you're looking for, another expert. Or, you've worked with Plashers Insurance. That's a person that you've made a relationship with that will help you find that next person. So um, that's always a great place to start. And then Mona, before we get back to Jordan, Mona, will you send us the slides? Jordan will be happy to send you the slides. Just contact him directly so that you can get the slides directly from him. All right.
And my email is right here on this last slide at the
Right on the
bottom.
slide. It will also be on the submission page of the evaluation form that I've put in the chat. You guys are required to fill that out if you want credits for the course. I put it in the chat. I will put it in the chat again. If you don't see it, just make sure you click on the chat and have it open so that you can receive it when I put it back in there in a few minutes. All right. So you have Jordan's contact information right on the screen, but you'll also have it upon submitting that page. All right. Lorraine, don't contractors generally just provide the best references? How can we rely on references when you want to know the good, bad, and ugly? It's a great question. I mean, I think we're kind of covering this and talking through it a little bit too, is um
Yeah, another big one is project history. So, ask them how many projects they've done. Um, and it's tough if someone really is bad, they're not going to do very many projects. They can probably, fib a little bit on the references, but if you look at their work history and the type of project that you have that they've done, I think that's a little bit of a good indicator. Or you could just, you could ask them for, their last 10 projects and then, don't ask them for references, ask them for their last 10 projects. And then you yourself go to those properties and ask, hey, how was this? And that's kind of a way around it. But to your point, yes, I mean, obviously people are going to put their,
best foot
you know,
forward.
yeah, right.
Naturally. Um, okay. Does your company do restoration before painting, stucco repairs, and expansion joints?
Yep, absolutely. And
Awesome.
um, yeah, most of that stuff should be done before painting. Some of it's subjective, and some people don't want it. But yes, I mean, ideally, all the you know all the substrates are back to perfect before you paint.
Excellent. Let's see. Do all concrete slash spalling repairs? Do you do all concrete slash spalling repairs? Excuse me.
Yes, we can. Yep. Yeah. And those can get a little complicated, depending if it turns structural. So, if you have any steel bar that is exposed and rusting, it can turn into a much larger project. But yes, we handle all of that.
Amazing. Thank you for the class. How do we get the credits for the class? So just by being here through this amount of time, as long as you were here for this majority of the class, you will receive credits. We send the Zoom attendance to Jordan and his team. They will submit the credits directly to the DBPR. I suggested to leave at least 10 business days before you guys see anything come through. Does that sound about right, Jordan?
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes in the summer it takes a little bit longer, but it should be just straight through the DBPR, guys. You don't have to do anything else. You have to fill out the evaluation form that I just put in the chat again to make sure you receive those credits, but you don't need to put your CAM numbers in the Q&A or anything like that. We see you guys in here. All right. Make sure to fill out that evaluation form. If a contractor isn't willing to do this advanced work, why consider them?
Fair question. I mean, yeah, um and yeah, I mean, I'm on your side. I like, yeah, I would say, yeah, why would we want to work with someone who's not willing to walk every part of the building? Some, some properties will hire that consultant, and then that consultant is kind of the one who's walking and making sure um, everything's working, or everything's quantified properly, rather. Um, but yeah, I, what you said is a true statement. I mean, yeah,
Turns like I have nothing. I can't argue with this.
yeah.
All right. Cynthia, our property management company doesn't seem particularly adept at developing good SOWs. Do we need a new property management company, or is there such a thing as project manager that could be hired even full-time to manage large scale work?
Yes. I mean, a good property management company at least has the general understanding of what creating a, good scope of work is. So I would say if, they're not doing that super well, maybe they do other things really well, and these are longer projects. So absolutely something to consider. But yes, there are consultants or project managers um, who that is their job. Like, they're just going to come in and assist and help you pick your contractor, and you know just help you with that side of things. Um, who's the one? There's one in Orlando, Vigilant Services. That's their main thing. All they do is they come alongside the board more so, rather than the property management company, because I think the property management company might look at them as a threat. But they come along the board and help just with the big construction projects. Um, so yeah, definitely something. A lot of maybe not a lot. I don't know. Maybe we are unique, but I think a lot of construction companies will also come alongside you in that manner as well. But we've worked with Vigilant Services quite a bit, and it is nice to have that, like, middle mediator, because he'll go to bat for us too, of like, hey guys, this clearly wasn't in the scope. Um, it's unreasonable to ask the contractor to pay for this. Um,
That's great. Is that like
yeah.
an owner's rep type of company?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yep.
amazing. I think
Yep.
there are a few that we worked with in some of our in-person events as well, that
Yeah.
you guys may have met if you were with us this past season. Very cool. Great tip.
Yep.
Okay, how often should a 20-year-old community be painted? Stucco exteriors.
Yeah, it depends what paint you used previously, but typical cycle is 7 years, and then now they've got some paint that goes up to 10 years. But also, again, going back to earlier, paper versus reality can be different. If it's an area that got rain every day for 3 years, that paint's going to deteriorate. And I will say too, and this gets overlooked a lot, and this is more specific to us and what we do, but paint is a protective coating. Like, paint is going to protect your stucco from cracking or water getting into those small hairline cracks. It's a lot more than just aesthetics. And I think that's something that people often overlook. So maybe your building even still looks good after 10 years, but if you get up to the stucco and you see these hairline cracks, that can cause water intrusion issues. But yes, to answer the question, 7 years depends on what paint you used last time. Um, the paint that we've been using a lot lately is from Sherwin-Williams. It's the Latitude, and it comes with a 10-year warranty. Um, so, but yes, 7 years would be the number I would look for.
I hope Jilla from Sherwin-Williams is in the audience today. All right. Let's see. When should you have to pull permits for spalling/concrete repairs?
Yep, anytime it's structural. So, which is the majority of the time, I would say. So, I would, yeah, once it becomes structural, you need an engineer and permitting involved.
And then last question, are stucco repairs part of a painting project?
I mean, technically, I mean, it depends on how the contract is drafted. Um, but yes, ideally, you're doing stucco repairs before you do painting, and thus we include it in all of our contracts if it's needed. Um, I mean, you can definitely hire two different companies to do it, but you want to make sure that the stucco repair is done before the painting.
Excellent. Just missed that live. All right, guys, lots of questions today. I love it. We had a lot of thank yous. This was very informative. We appreciate the information. So I just want to thank Jordan for an excellent job, and we appreciate it so much. This was a great topic. I'm gonna stick around for a few more minutes in case anybody has any technical questions about the evaluation or anything you guys need help with. I'm gonna open up the chat. Let's see. Attendees can chat with. All right, so you guys should be able to chat with me if you need at this point. Um, I'll put the evaluation form in one more time. So open up the chat, make sure it's open. Otherwise, we just want to say thank you so much to Jordan for your time today, giving us all this great information. And thank you to all of you who have joined us today. We'll see you soon, Jordan.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.